Let's look at Tesla stock, shall we? For no particular reason. Looks like a pretty normal day. Just kind of traded flat. No big swings up, no big swings down. So, pretty average. Oh my. What's happening here? Did Elon Musk actually go to Mars and declare it planet Tesla? Well, that's what we're going to talk about today on the Financial Beanstalk. Like the title says, Tesla is being added to the S&P 500, which is a pretty big milestone in their history. From the stock price going down for some reason after Elon Musk went on the Joe Rogan podcast, to a stock split that took place just a few months ago that bumped up the price, all the way to today when simply the announcement that they're going to be added to the S&P 500 jumped the stock price up almost 10%. And personally, I've invested $5 whole into Tesla and own 0.03397 shares. Even with just that $5 that I've invested, I'm up almost $10, so it's been a pretty fun ride so far. And who knows, at this rate, maybe that $5 will be my retirement eventually. You've probably already heard about this from the 100 other YouTubers that are quicker to upload than me, and I'm sure Meet Kevin has already uploaded like 5 videos talking about this, but we're going to talk about it anyway from a Beanstalk's perspective.
Hi.
Before we even get into that, let's just talk about what the S&P 500 is and why this is a big deal. Hey Katie, what's the S&P 500?
What's the S&P 500?
Yeah.
Stocks and people, if you have $500, probably.
Close. Hey Siri, what is the S&P 500?
S&P 500 was on the decline today, finishing at 3,609.53. That's a decrease of 17.38 or 0.48%.
But what is it? The S&P 500 index, or the Standard & Poor's 500 index, is a market capitalization weighted index of 500 of the largest publicly traded companies in the US. That's a little better. Like I described in a previous video, an index is basically a basket of stocks, so you own a small portion of a bunch of different companies. And the S&P 500 is one of the most popular ones that's out there, and it comprises 500 of the largest US companies. That's a little better than Siri just telling us how it did, I think. Another little blurb that I found said, the roughly 500 companies that make up the S&P 500 comprise more than 80% of the total value of all stocks on US exchanges. So it's an NBDB-PBD situation. No big deal, but pretty big deal. So in essence, outside of the NASDAQ, the S&P 500 is kind of the go-to to determine how the stock market is doing in general. So what companies are in there? Well, starting at the top in alphabetical order, we've got 3M, Abbott Laboratories, AbbVie Incorporated, Abiomed Inc., Accenture plc, Activision Blizzard, Adobe Inc. Okay, I'm not going to do this, but here they are. Got it? So like I said earlier, the S&P 500 comprises 500 of the largest companies, but that's not the only criteria you have to meet to make it in. You don't just hit a certain valuation, and congrats, you're in the S&P 500 now. There's a few more things you need to meet before getting admitted to the Cool Kids Club, which I was never a part of. First, you must have a market capitalization worth $8.2 billion or greater. Market capitalization is just taking the number of shares that are out in the world, timesing it by the stock price, and you get your market cap. The second criteria is the annual dollar value traded to float adjusted market capitalization is greater than 1. And I'll be honest, I don't fully know what this means, but from what I do know, the annual dollar value traded is how much was traded during the year, and then the float adjusted market cap is like market cap like we just talked about, but the float adjustment is how many shares are readily available for trading, because obviously there are a handful of people that are holding on to their shares and they won't sell them no matter what. So you take those two numbers, divide them, and it has to be greater than 1. I think. The third criteria is a minimum monthly trading volume of 250,000 shares in the 6 months leading up to the evaluation date of if it's going to be admitted into the S&P 500. This basically just means there needs to be enough shares moving around and being traded between different parties, so there's enough to go around so these indexes can actually buy them and include them. The fourth criteria is that it must be publicly listed on the New York Stock Exchange or the NASDAQ. This one's pretty simple, but it just basically kicks out any of those really small companies that aren't doing so hot and being traded over the counter, which is a topic for another day. The fifth and final criteria is that there are a handful of business structures that are ineligible for being included. These include limited partnerships, sorry Brookfield, master limited partnerships and their investment trust units, and American depository shares. These 5 things are just the first step in making it into the S&P 500, but the most important is being admitted by the actual Cool Kids Club, which is the S&P or Standard & Poor. So every single quarter, there's a committee that's meeting and determining which stocks they're going to add into the S&P 500 and which stocks they're going to kick out of the S&P 500. So that's it in a nutshell. Back to Tesla. They were actually eligible last quarter because they met the 5 initial criteria, but the committee said no. Let's be honest, up until now, Tesla has kind of just been a meme stock, and there are plenty of people that believe that Tesla was going to get completely removed from the stock exchanges. But now, there's no denying that they're here to stay. It's going to be very interesting what happens to the price of Tesla when these indexes actually start buying shares to include them. The S&P 500 is going to start trading them on December 21st of this year, so a little over a month now, which you can kind of consider an early Christmas present if you've always wanted to own Tesla, but you couldn't fork up enough cash to buy a share yourself. Obviously, there's a ton more we could talk about, but like I said earlier, there are other YouTubers that are way smarter than me that have already released videos about this. Zeke from the Dream Green Show was the first video that I saw released. He talked about it just hours after the news broke. Jeremy from Financial Education released his video, and of course, Graham Stephan just released his as well. So I encourage you to check those out, which I'll include links to those in the description below. So what do you think? Do you think Tesla should be included in these indexes like the S&P 500? Or do you still think Tesla is kind of a joke and that people are just risking their money and gonna lose their shirt? Or do you want to own Tesla yourself because you still think it's going to the moon? Let me know in the comments below. I want to thank you again for watching, and let's continue to grow this beanstalk. I forgot to mention, YouTube mumbo jumbo, that subscribe button, that like button, and that bell notification, and we'll see you next time.